My name's Jon Greenwald. I'm co-founder and CEO of Caira Surgical. And I've got to lead off with some distressing news, and that is that half of us in this room will at some point in our lives develop knee osteoarthritis. Now, there's a lot of treatments before joint replacement for that condition, but the prevalence of joint replacement, these are US statistics, has been growing rapidly over the past several decades, and by 2030, we anticipate there'll be 3.5 million joint knee replacement surgeries in the US alone. So over the years, there has been a lot of technology advancement to help surgeons optimize the outcomes in knee replacement. But another sort of alarming statistic is that only 17% of knees done in the United States utilize any sort of technology whatsoever. The majority of that is robotics and navigation. Why is that? It's because current technology impedes adoption. It puts up its own barriers. It gets in its own way to increasing use. So what you have here on the screen is a state-of-the-art navigation system, and whether your surgeon's using robotics or navigation, they rely on surgical tracking. And so most of what you see here is a surgical tracking system. In this instance, it's a navigation. But that consists of a couple of components. So the first is a user interface, which is often outside of the sterile field, and the surgeon relies on a tech or a sales rep to operate that at their instruction. And then the other is the primary mode of tracking right now is optical tracking. In fact, that's almost all joint replacement utilizes optical tracking. So optical tracking requires the use of these fiducials. And the fiducials are held in place in the anatomy with bicortical pins. So in this case, you see there's 2 pins in the tibia, 2 pins in the femur. And bicortical means they go all the way through the cortices. There is a complication rate associated with these pins. Everything from post-operative pin site pain to infection, and also, although it's a low incidence, under 2% fracture. And then you have an optical camera outside of the field. Now, the problem here is that the optical camera has to maintain uninterrupted line of sight with the fiducials throughout the procedure. What does that mean? That means that an assistant has to move themselves away from the table, so there's a surgeon losing a pair of hands that they would otherwise rely on, such that the optical tracking can have uninterrupted line of sight on the fiducials. So, other disadvantages with current tech, and this is from navigation systems to robotics, is their very high cost, not just for capital equipment, but also on a per procedure basis for the consumables or the disposables that are used in every case. They all add time to the operation. As I said, they increase infection risk as a result of the pins associated with the optical tracking. And complication risk, and there's a high complexity to these with a large learning curve, and that is partly why they add time to the procedure. And lastly, they're obstructive. Those pins get in the way, the team has to move around them, they're in place for the entire procedure. So we took a different approach. We looked at all of these pain points and we thought, how can we address these such that we lower the barriers to adoption of new technology in orthopedics? And the first, our flagship technology is to use radar for surgical tracking instead of optical. We also have other technologies that we've developed. The first is a handheld scanner, which enables very rapid anatomic registration. So that cuts registration down dramatically. The time, rather, cuts it down dramatically. And then also we have surgical planning that helps the surgeon develop a plan for each specific patient. But our flagship technology, the radar, utilizes a couple of elements. On the left there, you can see what we call the constellation, and it's just that. It's a constellation of 6 radar around a user interface. And rather than those big fiducials that go outside of the standard incision, require additional incisions and pins, we utilize radar beacons. Radar enables us to create a very small beacon that's held in place with a single 3.5 millimeter diameter cancellous bone screw. That's pretty small. So it fits within a standard incision. And unlike optical trackers, the beacons can be removed and replaced during the procedure. Why is that important? When surgeons are advancing cutting tools, oftentimes they want to get those trackers out of the way. So here you see what the relationship between the constellation and the surgical field, and you can see that tech on the left, or I guess on the left-hand side of this your right-hand side of the screen, doesn't have to move out of the way. There's no line of sight problem. Radar enables a couple of things. It enables proximity and redundancy. So proximity in that you can put a sterile drape, as pictured here, over the constellation, pull it in close to the sterile field, and redundancy in that the radars themselves are relatively inexpensive on an individual basis. So we have 6 of them in our constellation, and it is truly impossible to block all 6 simultaneously. So there's no line of sight problem with this. And here is the near production prototypes, constellation on the left, and on the right you can see the beacons. Okay, so we cut costs by about 75% when compared with robotic solutions. We remove a lot of time with a fast landmark registration with our scanner, and we improve safety and reduce complications by eliminating bicortical pins and additional incisions. The learning curve is very quick. That animation that you saw can be mastered by a surgeon in really one procedure. And it's unobtrusive. We get rid of the line of sight problem, and the beacons are removable and are small. So we have a very large market. We are a platform technology, so our first product is a navigation system for total knee replacement. And our product pipeline includes hip, spine, and even shoulder. So growing on a worldwide basis, we're a $13 billion TAM. And we also address a segment of the market that, as we all know, is growing very rapidly, and that's the ambulatory surgery or outpatient surgery centers. So by 2030, almost 70% of joints will move to outpatient settings. ASCs and outpatient settings have certain requirements. The reimbursement is typically lower, and they rely on surgery throughput. So our system enables really fast room turnover. It also decreases the time associated with using technology. So while we are building this technology as a standalone navigation system, we're also looking to integrate with surgical robots. As I said in the beginning, any robot requires a surgical tracking system. So we're looking to replace optical tracking with radar tracking on surgical robots and orthopedics. Nonetheless, we're building a company that is durable. We're obviously seeking collaboration with the big strategics, but whether or not that happens, the company is being built to go to market on our own. So we are already talking to 23 surgeons at 13 joint centers around the country. We are in discussions with key strategics as well. But this is what our limited clinical release looks like, end of 24, early 25. And compared to other technologies, we really have a lot of advantages, benefits. So I'll draw your attention to the cost, the second line. So our constellation will install for $75,000. Compared to other systems, it's a dramatic reduction in cost of capital equipment. That lowers a barrier to entry right away. And then we're also able to price our disposables lower. A lot of that is because the radar technology that we utilize, some of it's organic to Caira, but we are building on a lot of automotive radar advancements over the past decade. So the parts that we utilize, the components that we utilize in our electronics are all manufactured at scale. Thus, we can keep our COGS down and price ourselves lower on a per surgery basis than the rest of the market. Increased efficiency with the workflow, dramatically simplified, and we are also open platform. So as a navigation system, it can be used with any implant system from any manufacturer. This is our timeline. So we are looking to be clinical in the first half of next year. We've raised $6 million to date, and we have a robust supply chain in place already, quality system in place. And we're raising now a Series A for $10 million. Down the road, after the launch of our navigation system, we are also expanding our AI surgical planning tool. Fast landmark registration will be introduced thereafter. And then also, of course, robotic integration and other applications, hip, spine, shoulder. We have a very broad IP moat. We have 5 patents granted already on the radar system, and on the fast landmark registration. We have 8 in review and 6 in development. All of our granted patents have PCT protection outside of the United States as well. So we've been very active in protecting this space. There's also a lot of know-how associated with radar for surgery. We are the first company to utilize radar in a medical application, and also the first company in any field, aerospace, defense, automotive, to achieve a sub-millimeter accurate radar tracking system. And that's largely because in those other fields, there just isn't an application. They're more concerned in measuring accuracy in feet and inches rather than sub-millimeter. So we are a 510K regulatory pathway with multiple predicates. While radar itself is novel, surgical tracking does have a series of predicates. And in fact, our CTO worked on and obtained the 510K for the predicate that we intend to cite. Another unique feature of our system is that we have an ESG, or a reprocessing life cycle. In other words, rather than having disposable consumables, as most of these competitive robotic and navigation systems do, we intend to ask hospitals to return them to us. And then we've designed the beacons in such a way that we can reprocess them. In other words, they come in, we clean them, and extract the electronics, put them through a quality assurance process, and then put them back into the manufacturing cycle. So in this way, this is not just, it's not just reducing our environmental footprint, but it also has a tangible impact to our COGS. We put together a super team. I've been in orthopedics about 25 years, 8 years with J&J, several startups, including OrthoSensor, which we exited to Stryker. My co-founder is a high-volume orthopedic surgeon at NYU. Our CFO spent 10 years on Wall Street doing a lot of big healthcare deals. Gordon, our CTO, who you saw earlier in the presentation, he and I worked together at OrthoSensor. He has spent 25 plus years of his career developing surgical navigation systems. And then our software engineering team is very strong. Sarah and Wendell, with deep imaging backgrounds, and Safa is a radar hardware engineer. She comes from the automotive industry. As you can imagine, there's not a whole lot of radar talent within Medtech. So we also have a network of fantastic partners, both on the development and clinical side. Our key radar advisors there in the middle of the slide, they were both 23 and 24 presidents of the IEEE radar section and ran their radar meeting. So we've got some very high-powered support on the radar side. And then also some legacy of other companies. We have Stefan Kreutzer on the top, was involved in Mako's, and Dr. Valivas. They were both involved in Mako's IDE, so a lot of experience bringing new technologies into the OR and to market. And then lower left, you see Jonathan, or lower right rather, you see Jonathan Truesdale. He was early on at Mako and also was chief legal counsel at OrthoSensor. So again, we are looking to partner with strategics. We do have an exit strategy, and that is to exit to a large strategic, but nonetheless, we're building a durable company that is self-sustainable. And as we build out our product line, we anticipate being a $40+ million company by 2028. We are raising now, as I said, a Series A for $10 million. The use of proceeds for that is for R&D to support our continued pipeline development, and then also sales and marketing to support the limited clinical release operations, building all the inventory, et cetera, to support that clinical release, and then continued IP development and regulatory approval. Now, in this space, there has been a lot of M&A over the last several years. I know we've had a slowdown of the last 12 some odd months, but in the space, there's a lot of activity whereby strategics are acquiring technologies that are either standalone technologies or make existing technologies better. In other words, improve a robotic system. And then also provide a pathway into that ASC segment or that outpatient segment. Caira fits into every single one of those categories. So lastly, we have an extremely experienced team, a great IP moat, very large market. We've got great partners both on the clinical and product development side. We address many of the pain points associated with technology adoption, and we decrease cost, which is one of the big pain points that everybody dislikes. Thank you very much.